Alright, welcome. So we're gonna talk about Kayn's character design in this video. I ran like a random calculator thing for the Champions of League, except Ilaoi obviously, because we just did her. And it landed on Kayn. Now, before we begin this video for real, I will warn you that I have ended up with approximately 30 different slides. And I was expecting somewhere about 10. So this video might be extremely long. But you're gonna have to bear with that if you want to watch it. I put a lot of effort into this one, a lot more than with Ilaoi. So I really hope that you do enjoy. Right, so let's talk about Kayn. Kayn's story. First of all, he was an Noxian child soldier, and he was left in battle. Zed came and picked him up. In Kayn, Zed saw a kid who he could sort of morph into a weapon against Noxus, right? And so Kayn became really good at combat and generally at using weapons and becoming like a great student of Zed and of the Shadow Warder, right? And with that, his arrogance and his legend grew, because obviously Kayn is a deeply mentally fucked person. That's the first thing I want to get clear, is that Kayn is completely messed up. He's actually insane. Because, like, he's a child soldier that was left in battle, and then he was picked up by an organization which really, and I know that people like the relationship between Kayn and Zed, and they see it sort of like an anime thing, but the way it's written, the way that I see it anyway, is that Zed really only picked Kayn up because he knew that Kayn could be pretty like a pretty good soldier, or rather assassin, against Noxus. So what if Kayn someday dies? Like he's probably gonna do some good work. So we could work with this, right? So he's really being manipulated by the Shadow Order. They don't have his self best, they don't have his self-interest. Wait, what is the term I'm looking for? They don't have his best self-interest. You know what I'm saying. It's fine. You know what I'm saying. And so this entire deal becomes so important to him because he doesn't really have anything to cling on to except being really good at killing stuff. And so since that's his entire personality, he also becomes extremely arrogant when he keeps on succeeding, right? His final test would be before he, I don't know, before he was like promoted or something, I don't know, they never specified. But his final test would be to retrieve Rast from Noxus and destroy it. Now, he obviously rushes into the quest, takes it upon himself, and he just steals Rast without destroying it. In the story where Kayn picks up or takes Rast, he has another student with him, presumably because Zed knows that, well, we're gonna go to Noxus, so Kayn having to deal with the Noxians would be a good idea because, well, Kayn hates them. So he's probably gonna do a really good job. But Kayn is also a kind of a psychopath, so we are gonna send this dude with him to make sure everything goes smoothly. And what I assume happened, because it's heavily implied that Kayn just straight up kills the other student because he tries to stop him. And then whenever he returns, he'll just be like, I'm sorry, master. Fucking the other dude died to the Noxians, and I tried to destroy the weapon or some stupid shit like that. So he's definitely not a good guy. That's pretty important to like say. He's not like your good anime archetype protagonist, whatever, shonen thing. He is a bad guy. Yeah, so he now believes that he's gonna rule the entire world, or at least the Shadow Order, or whatever. So how does his design tell his story? So we'd like to see something. Well, it's not necessary for all of these points, but we prefer to be able to see in some way that he has been a child soldier or that he's Noxian. The fact that he's arrogant and impatient is very important to the story. That's a lot of who he is, so that's very important to display. He has mastered fear, and that's in quotation mark. I haven't made quotation marks, but it is literally said that he has mastered fear. He is a prodigy student. He's an anime edgelord. Well, I said protagonist, or rather that he wasn't earlier, but you know, wrote it here. Doesn't matter. He's not really the protagonist. He's more of like the antagonist, really, right? Then Rast, and we'll sort of get to Rast later, but like he's having like the Oni aesthetics. That's kind of like the archetype he's trying to embody. One of them, he has multiple. Then we want to see something of the Darkin Host. And we want to see that he is mentally very unwell. Yeah, and also, this is like a bit of a story point, but the reason that I believe, at least, the story reason I think makes sense for him to be able to resist Rast's corruption is the same coping mechanism that allows him to be manipulated by the black, or rather by the Shadow Order, and also like the mental, like his mental situation is so broken that he is capable of resisting it because of his coping mechanism and his skill in his coping mechanism. So if he ever were to actually be mentally healthy again, he would probably instantly just die to Rast. Like, Rast would just go like, yep, fuck this shit. Shing, and then, you know, take over the body instantly, right? I'll talk a bit about that later too. Right, so arrogance and impatience. He should want to show himself off. Lack of armor suits him because of his arrogance and impatience. And he believes himself the successor to Set, and should treat his duties, thus uniform, as beneath him. So he shouldn't be wearing uniform. And he also wrote, well, he shouldn't be wearing that many clothes, really. Pants is keep your pants on. He's got to keep his pants on, okay? But it's a good thing that he actually does show off his upper body. Let me find an art that sort of shows it. So his base splash, yeah, it's kind of stupid that I didn't include that in the slide, but it's whatever. So Kayn's upper body needs to be bare because it needs to be able to show what kind of character he is. And in Kayn's case, even though he is a handsome guy who's kind of sexy for some people, that's not the intention with the design. It's like a benefit from a corporate perspective because, you know, the sex sells argument. I kind of stand by it sometimes. But it's like, especially for like the age of the people that play League of Legends. Now it has gone up a bit, but when it used to be very young people, then something like this would be much stronger and like selling stuff. But yeah, he needs to not have the armor because yeah, he's arrogant and he doesn't think he needs it, and he rejects his student attire because he doesn't see himself as the student, and he's also very, well, once again, arrogant, right? So he wants to show himself off. So that's really good. That it's important that he is that, and the other kinds of art pieces we have of him, where he actually has more clothes, I think misses the point of why he doesn't have it in the first place, which is kind of annoying because it feels like the reason that they give him more clothes has been because of backlash to some of the much worse newer designs which sort of tend to appeal more to like sexy stuff, right? Student prodigy. So, in spite of his rejection of the student identity, he should still be wearing the prestigious imagery. Oh, Jesus Christ, the prestigious imagery as he is a model student. And examples would be martial arts belts, medallions, or like headbands or stuff like that. Stuff that sort of shows his rank within the, Ionian order, right? And Ionia is Asia, so it's got to be Asian inspired, right? The way to do that for Kayn, as I said, with the martial arts belt and medallion, would be something like the difficult thing is we don't really actually know that much about the Shadow Order and how they, teach their students. We have one piece of art from Legends of Runeterra which depicts a Shadow Order student. And then we have a few other Shadow Order members, and we have the comic. And I don't really think any of them ever explored this idea of what the student would be wearing. So you pretty much have free reign to do whatever you want. I have came up with a solution that I think works, but we'll get into that later when I sort of show my concept for Kayn, right? But yeah, I don't think he shows any of it. He doesn't show a prestigious belt in any way. He doesn't have a medallion. He doesn't have, like, you could argue that you'd go into more traditional student stuff with like a hat or texts or a textbook, but I don't think that makes any sense for this case, because Kayn is very impatient, so he's not the type of guy who would just, sit down and read or anything. But yeah, I definitely think he needs to have something that's prestigious but isn't specific to being a student, but more of like a prize that you can win. Within this, okay, so within this student or school system, there should be a prize that you can win that Kayn wants to show off, because that is something that's impressive, but not, and something that ties him to being a student, but not something that ties him to being less than someone like Seth, right? So I should probably have started out with this, but Kayn's archetype is an anime edgelord, and once again, it's a little bit less of a protagonist and a little more of an antagonist. Obviously, we read his story from his own perspective, so he is a protagonist, right? But what does that mean? What are anime edgelord protagonists known for? So he's embodying the archetype or rather this archetype really well, right? His hairstyle is sort of elaborate. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's sort of impressive in some way. He has like an extravagant weapon. He's generally pretty good looking. He is insane, which is also typically like something that those types of characters are, or not necessarily insane, but a little bit crazy in some ways. He has a dark and dangerous power source, and well, multiple, because shadow magic is the other one. And then his personality is also very shonen sort of. I don't know if those are the right terms, because I don't actually watch that much anime myself. I think I've only ever finished like 2 or 3. And I don't watch anime, so yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I would wager that a lot of anime characters have a personality, or at least edgelord characters have a lot of stuff that is similar to Kayn. Assuming they aren't the silent type. So, Noxian child soldier. Kayn's race is actually important because it shows that he is not from Ionia himself. And that's important because if we mix it with the fact that he has his student achievements and all that, this piece of art doesn't show it well. He looks Asian here, which is an issue for the character. But it's really what was my point? For fuck's sake. The race is important, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so he has his student achievements, right? Or he's supposed to have them because they prove that how highly he thinks of himself and that he's been within the order. Yet he's an outsider and he's probably like around 18 years, maybe a little older. So that would sort of paint the image that Kayn has been there for a long time, right? He's been in Ionia for a long time. Also, and this is not necessarily an Ionian thing, but his what the fuck is that called? Oh god. wait a second. It's not a braid. Is it? It's something tail, isn't it? I don't... Like in my language, you'd say a horsetail, but I don't think it's called a horsetail in fucking English. That sounds very incorrect. Just a second. I'm sorry, I gotta figure this out. Ponytail. Of course. Okay, so he has a ponytail that's been braided. I guess it's not a ponytail. Whatever. Doesn't matter. He has a ponytail, a braided ponytail, whatever. That means that he has been there for a long time because, well, in Noxus, you probably wouldn't have this type of hairstyle. Now, it's not necessarily like he could have had long hair his entire life. Who the fuck knows? But judging by the fact that he has been a child soldier, his hair would have been short. And as such, he it makes a lot of sense for him to have like the braid, right? The thing is though, even though we can see that he's Noxian because he's not Asian, I think there are some issues with like showing his Noxian heritage and all that stuff because we don't really get from him in general that he's been a child soldier, right? It's a very abstract, or rather the way you figure that out is very abstract from like looking at him. You have to really think about a lot of stuff. And I also think that it's none of those ways to get there are really 100% set in stone that, oh shit, wait, that's why he's like this, right? Anyway, let's move on to the next point. So if you'd give him shadow tattoos or shadow tattoo covers written in Noxian, you'd make it clearer that he is Noxian, that he learned to write Noxian at an early age. Not necessarily, but it sort of supports the other points. And if you look at it in like its entire picture, you'd get that feeling, I think. But 3, it supports his perfect student and arrogance sort of persona, right? And the tattoo covers would normally be the things that were also used in the comic to prohibit Seth from using his magic, so that would actually limit him, and thus it's not really something that you'd want to do. And the tattoo is also not written in any language, so that's also, it doesn't really work. I do think you could do something with it and just in general rework the way the tattoos are written. I think it would be much better to have it be Noxian letters or something like that. I feel like that would work really well for him. And then there's the last thing, which was that Ras was retrieved from Noxus. So where's the influence of that, right? where is the influence of that, and where was he even found in the first place? Now, we don't know that. We just know that Noxus found him, and they specifically unearthed him. So I assume that he's been somewhere in Shurima, right? That's sort of the standard assumption. But we'll talk more about Rast and his relationship to his story later. Mental situation. So, a covered, blinded, or infected eye means unable to see the whole picture or the truth. This is once again a stupid piece of art for like showing this off because it doesn't do it. But normal Kayn has his eye covered, right? This is what annoys me so much about some of the other designs, where this one does that really well. This one doesn't do it at all. That sort of does it, but like the wide version is also like there's some really weird things that are lost from the original. And this Legends of Runeterra piece just doesn't do it at all, right? Okay, you can't even see it that well. Actually, this one shows it fine. But yeah, the darken impact on his psyche is there, right? That's why his eye is covered. So that's really good. He embraces danger for the sake of power, and we can also see that from the way that he's dressed. That has a lot to do with the arrogance and impatience, right? And also, like, he's wielding Rast. So yes, he's embracing danger for the sake of power. He is putting himself on the line. We can physically see that with the darkened corruption, right? He does not actually care. He wants the power to be able to do what exactly, right? He doesn't need the power to do anything specific. He wants it to receive love. He wants to be liked. He wants to be loved. He wants to be sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? He wants to be appreciated and looked up to and sort of treated like he is worth something. And then not in kind of like because Kayn isn't the type of guy who'd want that in some kind of like very emotional, sad way. He's more of like it's just his coping mechanism for his entire life is to have the mental feeling that he is more than everyone else, and that is why he's had the life that he has, and that's why it's worth it, because he is now better than everyone. So he has mastered fear, and he looks dangerous, so people would fear him, and Rast makes him look scary, but it also makes him blind to what he should be scared of, like no armor and Rast's influence. So he has mastered fear. What does that mean? It means that he is no longer afraid of stuff because he's mastered it. And also he puts the fear in other people because he's mastered it. And both of those work perfectly well with the character. As I mentioned, it makes him blind to what he should be scared of, like Rast's influence, right? So that works really well. Kayn is so fucked that the reason he withstands Rast is because of how broken he is. He can only find peace the day he lets go of everything, which could be achieved by retiring as a farmer, giving the scythe even more meaning. Right. So this is just a story point for why I'll sort of touch on this a little bit later too when we reach the Shadow Assassin chapter. This is also why this video is so long, because he literally has 3 forms. But yeah, it's retiring as a farmer deal, you know, aside, that's where it comes from, harvesting crops, right? And finding peace in his sort of, fuck, I keep forgetting words, man. His independence, there we are. His independence would work really well for him. But obviously that's not where he is right now. Right now he's very dependent on other people looking up to him the way he looks up to himself. But when he leaves this life behind, he would become independent, and he would just take up the simple, very peaceful life, right? I believe that Kayn's other eye should also be covered in some kind of like heavy. I've written heavy Batman eyeliner, and that is to prove his role as a weapon to the Shadow Order. So Rast has taken over the one eye, right? So he's in control of one half, and the Shadow Order is in control of the other half, by depicting that he has the Shadow Order marks on his eyes. And that mirrors exactly his life, right? The other thing that this does is sort of, depending on how you depict it, it can actually also sort of prove, it can also mimic tears, which is, I think that works for him, because he would never cry himself. But if you have those like streaming shadow tattoos down from his eye, then it would show that he's like, it would support the idea that he is very unwell, even if he can't cry. So role of the Scythe. It gives Kayn the Grim Reaper mental image, but it also sort of depicts in a way that Kayn is the crop ready for harvesting for Rast. Because Rast is the Scythe. It's not Kayn that's the Scythe. He's just wielding it. Rast is the Scythe. He is ready to or rather, he is going to harvest the crop, right? Then there's like the anime thing. And then lastly, the farm life I spoke about. Darken influence. Rast's eye is red, and one of Kayn's eyes is corrupted by Rast, taking the role as Rast's other eye. So both of Rast's eyes are present, right? This also causes Kayn to literally see red, which is also an indicator of him not seeing things as they are, but seeing them with sort of an emotion or something else in the way, right? In this case, he's seeing life from the perspective of a Darkin 50% of the time, or rather all of the time, but like on 50% of his vision. The growing Darkin corruption is really good because it signals a lot of stuff we talked about earlier, but also just that you can see that there is Darkin influence, right? It was said publicly on the very old forums that the blue streak in Kayn's hair is actually a byproduct of Rast. I'll just pull it up. And that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm 90% sure that the designer of Rast, I don't remember if he was the one that said that specific thing, but I'm pretty confident that the reason that he gave him the blue streak was really just for contrast. But also it supports the idea of like the Shadow Order. So personally, I've also written it here, I'm just gonna decanonize that and say that the reason it's blue is just a cosmetic byproduct of his self-image, his archetype, and the Shadow Order. All right, it's just an identity thing. It's all right for like a character in a medieval setting, in a medieval high fantasy setting, to have some kind of, how do you say, like cosmetic, you know, what he wants to look like. Hair coloring. Rast is the archetype of an Oni. We can't really see it here because it's just a weapon, right? But he is also the archetype of the living weapon and the devil on the shoulder. Scythe Rast does look like a good mix between organic matter and metal. That's really good too. people have tried to cover his handle. To wield him, cloth could easily be more ragged and unimpressive, as well as look Noxian. So this was just a point I came up with because, you know, he actually has some kind of like handle cloth, whatever, that's been wrapped around him. And this would presumably be, since it's intact, it would probably be from Noxus. It could be also where they unearthed him, but I doubt that. I heavily doubt that. So I would have liked to see the handle stuff, the handle wrap, be a lot more Noxian. It's in its depiction, and also a lot more ragged. So that, because we all know that the Nox, like, nobody can wield Rast and just get away with it. So even getting close to him is kind of dangerous. So they would have to like have done it very hastily, and it has to look like it's been a really, really tough fight to actually even get that stuff around him. The organic matter and the metal kind of thing, it's perfect, right? Living weapon, that's why it's good. However, one problem that I do have is that I don't know if it's really necessarily a problem. I can't really tell what I feel about it. But we don't get to see any Shuriman or celestial magic influence in Rast. And I'm not sure if I like that. I think it's fine, like the entire Shurima thing. I think that's fine. Maybe. Actually, is it? Because like, it's not that he didn't have like very strong feelings and a strong backstory involving Shurima. Well, we don't know his backstory, but like he's a Darkin, right? So that by itself should mean that Shurima is relevant to him, like on a personal level. He's also very, very distraught by the Celestial Man, like what Zoe did to them, right? Or the aspect that was before Zoe. And I think having some kind of luck imagery on the site itself, and have that be like with a celestial look, would be really good. Like having it maybe even merged into the weapon itself, so it's a part of the weapon. So the handle has like this lock motif that looks a little bit different, like celestial metal or something like that, right? I think that would work really well. In fact, I really think a lock would work well on him. I think that will also give a lot more of that. Well, a lot more. He's already very, anime over the top, right? But it would support that idea of like anime edgy over the top. Oh, it's got a lock on it. It can't get out, blah, blah, something stupid like that, right? But his role as a living weapon and as the devil on the shoulders works really, really well for him. Despite the fact that we don't know anything about Rast's backstory himself, that could easily be written later as like, well, Rast is manipulative in some kind of way, or he's like some kind of, generally in his ascended life, he would probably also be some kind of devil on the shoulder type character, right? Which is quite weird because I'll get into that later, but there are some implications about his design and his personality that are very unique if you're gonna try to make that character a devil on the shoulder. So I think that's really interesting if they decide to do something with that, and I think they should, because those are two things that are not normally like put in the same character. Right, so my changes to Kayn. So I think base Kayn is generally borderline perfect. He's he's just really, really, really fucking good design. I'd like more shadow. As you can see, like the biggest thing I've probably done with him that I think is the most relevant is the shadow thing around his eyes and down his like neck and onto his arms. I think there should be more of that, and the kind of rough the difficult concept of doing that is that you oversaturate the character, possibly. But I do think that it's possible to do it in a way without oversaturating him. I don't think it's necessarily destructive to the character design to add that to him. The other thing is I added the medallion on his belt, right? Just to show a lot of like the student kind of stuff that we talked about earlier. I tried to do some Noxians 2 ideas, but like obviously I can't write Noxian, so I just made some shapes. But that was basically the idea. Then I did some of the handle wrap. I kind of fixed that up for what I thought would make more sense. And also like scar tattoo eyeliner stuff for the eye, which I also mentioned. And then I added a product label for Noxus. And thinking a lot more about it, obviously Kayn would have ripped that off the second he got his hands on that thing. Because he fucking hates them. So no, there would not be a product label on Rast. Like once they retrieved Rast, they probably could have added it, but he would have removed it again. Maybe some kind of like seal would have been better. Some kind of seal worked into like the cloth, because that way you can actually see the Noxian influence. While it's something that Kayn can't necessarily remove. You could also just make like a hole where there was some kind of seal that he just ripped off, right? But yeah, other than that, I think the main things about base Kayn is that I would like more shadow tattoo influence on him. A lot more, in fact, because it also just to mimic how much of Rast is actually present on him. And then his mental situation and all that stuff, I think it would work really well for him. Also, like the edgy enemy protagonist, all of it just lines up really well. And then the medallion, I also think is pretty important to have. Also because I'm going to use it later for the shadow assassin design. But yeah, this is like sort of the image I would like to have for Kayn. So this is another lore bit which I feel is relevant. And it's that Kayn only really works if the power scales of the universe are much more compressed. That would mean that the Ascended and the Darken aren't like literal godlike beings. Because right now, I don't even think they are. Because like, in the story where Kathia once stood, there were Ascended warriors that died to having been overrun by mortals. Or something like that. I think Jax even killed one. Or defeated one in some way. Which, those facts alone should be a massive indicator of the Ascended's power. And that it isn't like all powerful in any way. And then having them become darkened, it's like, okay, so you learned blood magic, and that's the difference. That's the difference. Like, okay, sure, you've been locked inside of your weapon and you're borderline immortal. But like, you can't tell me that the only difference is that these Darkin have learned blood magic, and that's why that's the difference power-wise between them and the Ascended. And then, for some reason, they would be a world-ending threat. That makes no sense. Makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. I can absolutely accept that they are very, very powerful. But bitch, fucking Renekton lost. Renekton lost to fucking, I think it was a Vastaya. Like, come on. He had to activate his bullshit fucking super Big Mac size to actually, well, I mean, he also demolished him when he did that, but like, come on. You can't tell me that Renekton was just so depressed that he just lost to a fucking human level guy. And then suddenly, in the same vein of like power level, we have fucking Aatrox, who's supposed to be able to kill gods. He killed a constellation. He killed a fucking constellation. What is this bullshit? Okay, so that is metal as fuck, and it's cool as fuck, and I love it, and I think Aatrox is fucking awesome. But please, you can't just have these world-ending threats, and then suddenly one day they just decide to like attack fucking Noxus or Demacia or whatever, and they are just gonna kill everything. That doesn't make sense. What prohibits them from doing that? Oh, well, they need a power source to like stay alive and all that. Alright, okay, sure, that's a cool gimmick to like work around with story-wise, and also like, you know, just in general when you want to write battle and all that stuff. But but you can't, I don't know. Like I feel like they are too powerful, and I feel like their actual power level, like genuinely canonically, was always supposed to not be as massive as people think of them. Also, like, this brings me back to like the point of why I even bring this up, which is that Kayn is able to resist that. Okay, sure, Aatrox is stronger than most of the other ones. Oh, well, he is the strongest Darkin. But what he's being said to be Superman level. He's the Superman of Shurima. Okay, so what the fuck does that make Rast? Is he just like I don't even I can't tell. It's annoying. Because Kayn shouldn't be able to resist Superman of Shurima level bullshit. No fucking way. And I refuse to believe it's because Rast is just gonna be like, see, you're making me cough, bro. You're making me cough, man. But I refuse to believe that Rast has just been like, you know what? I'm just gonna let Kayn run around for a little while, develop his shadow skills, so that I can inhabit him once I kill him. Oh, because I need those shadow skills, it'd be amazing. Oh, Kayn, can't you hurry up with your studies and read a book or two? No fucking way. No fucking way. Sure, he might be interested in this shadow bullshit, but he could learn it himself, alright, if he really cared about it, which it doesn't seem like he does. Rast would have instantly fucking murdered Kayn on the goddamn spot. Every single day of the week, every single universe, every single fucking time. Doesn't, like, Rast at his most compassionate would do it by would automatically just take him over. So I refuse to believe that they are as powerful as people seem to think, and that rather they are like still really powerful, but they are just much less so. Which also allows for Kayn's mental situation to sort of like be a wall to stop Rast or whatever. Right. That brings us to the Shadow Assassin. And then we'll talk more about Rast later. So, the archetype of the Shadow Assassin is the final super mega anime form. The ultimate Shadow Order assassin, surpassing Zed. It's a what-if situation, in my opinion. Because it feels like it should be possible for Kayn to beat Rast, and if he does, then his method would prevent him from wanting to be the Shadow Assassin. And what I mean by this is, the Shadow Assassin is the same thing as Rast to Kayn. It is something that undoes Kayn and sort of kills him, in a way. Because, and I know it's sort of, it isn't supposed to be that, but like that's what everything points towards to me. Because this is the manipulation of the Shadow Order that takes him over. And he sort of distracts Rast's power to become the ultimate Shadow Assassin. To finally sate his hunger for achieving or becoming the ultimate master above Zed and becoming just, you know, the perfect Shadow Assassin or whatever the fuck, right? And that's inherently something that's wrong with him. That's like, it's a mental distraction that he has with himself. Kayn's ultimate goal shouldn't be to become the Shadow Assassin, but he he's been so fucked that that's what he thinks he wants, right? So if Kayn ever were to beat Rast, that would mean that he would be completely at peace with himself, I think, and let go of Rast and fight back the corruption with a peace of mind. And that's why he would want to, retire to the farm life and just use the scythe for its intended purpose. He doesn't have to fucking murder people. He can just, like, he's not trying to achieve it. He doesn't, like, sure, he wants to punish Noxus because they wronged him, but like, that's not what he like. He hasn't shown any or a lot of like care about that. He just wants power and wants to be more and wants to. I want to be the best. He's been consumed by it, and that's what this shadow. That's what a shadow assassin is. It's his hunger for power having consumed him in a different way than Rast, but like the other thing that haunts him. Both the Shadow Assassin and Rast, none of them are good outcomes. Both of them are identity deaths for Kayn. Right, so what does the Shadow Assassin Kayn form need to do to depict what he's supposed to be? Form needs to go absolutely crazy, right? It is supposed to be the final Super Mega Anime form. So it's supposed to be go super crazy. It needs to show that he has surpassed Set in some kind of ceremonial way. Apparently he has claws, which it sort of goes like, he's a monster now. Which, okay, sure, that kind of works. That's kind of cool. But I don't think it's necessary for him. I don't think it really supports a whole lot. I think it's more of like, it's a small design thing that works if the rest of him is coherent with what he's supposed to be. And I don't think that the Shadow Assassin is. In my opinion, he should be left-handed because he's no... Wait. What hand does he actually carry Rast in normally? Fuck. That's... Oh shit, that is his left hand. Okay. He should be right-handed then. He should be right-handed because he's no longer holding Rast. Rast was the right side of, the left side of Kayn is Rast. But he's not holding Rast. So in my opinion, he would want to switch to right hand just for like the imagery. And to also mirror the story, right? His hair and skin and tattoos are good. I would like much more shadow tattoo stuff or just like shadow stuff. But I'll get into that later. But it's his pale skin and his hair is especially his hair is really anime and really good and shadowy and stuff like that. And also his pale skin sort of it paints him as not only death itself, but also that he is dead. Kayn is dead. Right? That identity is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. Now it's the power that has taken over him. His Urna is really cool. I like that he has an Urna, and I also like that. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it actually. I don't know a lot about it, so I'll be a little discreet about how I describe these kind of things. But an Urna in Buddhism, I'm pretty sure, is supposed to be a depiction of enlightenment and like the third eye kind of stuff, right? For those that don't know, the Urna is the thing that he has on his forehead. I also think the way that his eyes, the shadow stuff around his eyes work really well because now that has taken over him. And that's sort of also the thing that I wanted to be on his base design, just on one of the eyes, right? And I've written that he should be at peace. And that's because the Shadow Assassin is supposed to be the good ending for Kayn. It's not. It's not. Story-wise, it's not the good ending for Kayn. But people seem to think that it's the good ending for Kayn. And I think that it has been sort of written, or not written, but like, it's sort of been produced in a way. And also with like his following his skins and the way that the Riot themselves depict the Shadow Assassin as like the better version or whatever. If those are the cases, then he should be at peace, which he is not here. But he should be a lot more in. He should be a lot more congruent with himself. He should be a lot more like. He's a lot calmer. He's a lot more focused because he doesn't need to think anymore. And I think it manages to do that, the base design here. So both Shadow Assassin and Rast should go harder. So this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but because we haven't talked about Rast yet. But yeah, Rast needs to go harder too, and I'll obviously touch on that soon. But he specifically should be more monstrous and restless and wild, representing not only the demon inside of Kayn, but also the personality of Rast and what he actually is. He should also, like, yeah, just generally be more monstrous. He ends up, and I know that a lot of people probably really like Rast, and also really like that, you know, he's taken over Kayn, so he sort of has Kayn's body. But that weakens the character to me. I don't think it's impossible for especially a body morphing demon to stay inside of like the body shape of Kayn. That doesn't really make sense to me. So I definitely think that some more should be done about Rast. And the Shadow Assassin should also be even more ethereal and orderly and spirit-like in an angelic kind of way to counterpart Rast. Because since Rast is an Oni, the Shadow Assassin should easily follow some ideas from ancient spirits mirroring the Oni. So what could that be? Some of the Asian mythos to mirror the Oni, right? Yamabushi monks maybe mimic their attire. Yamabushi monks are protectors against evil. Basically, they ward off evil spirits, right? And they have different types of attires, and they sort of they don't all of them look like this guy. It's the person up here, right? But this is something that I think you'd be able to depict with him. Then we have the Kitsune, and I've written shadow trails. Sure, it's like some kind of tails, tendrils, shadow stuff that you could do with him. I think, and the difficult thing is you might be approaching Ari territory, but I think there's a way to get around that. Then we have, and I'm so sorry if I butcher the way that this is pronounced, but the Devas, or the put, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't say it at all because I haven't actually researched how it's pronounced. I just assume that it's not Devas, but I don't know. Maybe it is, but these two kinds of deity slash spirit slash, yeah, well, spirits, sort of are often depicted with multiple arms or not of shadow, but multiple arms, and they have urnas, which is like the enlightenment thing. And the multiple arms shadow and the mark on the forehead for Kayn works really well already, that he has the urna, right? But also the multiple arms could also help mimic the idea of enlightenment. Then we have the Tengu, who's like attire or shadow, or rather his wings could be mimicked in some kind of shadowy way, right? What does that result in? This is my version of the Shadow Assassin. And obviously, I'm not an artist. If you couldn't tell, I'm not an artist. And so I can't really make a perfect version or anything for you. But I do think that I got what I wanted to show across. So I think that my version is a lot more extra. There's a lot more stuff. Without it, I don't think it's over saturation of design. I know that we talked a little bit about how that can be a problem earlier. But I think I've managed to keep the design sort of coherent and without being too noisy. Even though there are a lot of shapes, hopefully it's not going to be too noisy. But I've added like the shadow tendrils at the bottom to mimic the kitsune stuff without going into actual kitsune depiction and Ari territory. We have the multiple arms. We have the shadowy kind of wings. And we have the urna on his forehead, and also the beads / medals that he has achieved, right? So this would be a mimic the one that I had on his belt. And then because he's reached the ultimate form, he would have a lot more of them to depict that, well, this is his status. This is his power inside of the Shadow Order. This is his rank, right? And all of these things are sort of mimicking Asian spirits, yet he ends up looking really, really, really evil, right? A character that after I finished this up, I actually realized that he looks a lot like Thanatos, which is perfect, because Thanatos is the angel of death in, I believe it's Greek mythology, right? And that's what Kayn is. He is the angel of death when he is the Shadow Assassin. He's literally a god, right? He's really close to Thanatos. So that's perfect because that's how he sees himself. So I think I've managed to do something really cool for him, and I hope that you think too. Yeah, I just think it works a lot better with this character. And I also want to make sure that everyone, of course, understands that the way the shadows would be rendered is more like, you see how the original art piece has like his hair and shadows coming out of like the scythe. It'd be rendered a lot more in that direction, right? So it wouldn't just look like something made in paint. Then we have Rast. So as we said earlier, living weapon, devil on the shoulder, he's an Oni. He is a Darkin, which is corrupt ascended. He uses blood magic, he's insane, he's bloodthirsty, and he's a psychopath. There's not a lot of story behind Rast, except that he is, well, a Darkin, right? But his personality is at least insane, bloodthirsty, and psychopathic. So he should look like his ascended animal totem. We don't know what that is specifically. There are some guesses, and I'm gonna bring one of them up. But he should definitely look like his ascended, or like a corrupt form of his ascended version. So whether he does that or not, we can't really tell before we know what his ascended version is. The horns are really good. They show some of his animal background while making him stand out as a devil. So we can assume that his animal form has had horns. Yeah, so I don't think he looks insane, bloodthirsty, or psychopathic enough. He doesn't go far enough with that. His design is very symmetrical and orderly, actually. Which, apart from like his horns and the color scheme, he just ends up looking, it's not at all sort of crazy and bloodthirsty and all that stuff like he's supposed to be. Well, he does look bloodthirsty, but the kind of insanity that an asymmetrical design could show just isn't there, right? He's a body morpher. Then he morphs his body through blood magic, so he doesn't have to look like Kayn's body type, and he should also sort of the people, or rather the kills that he absorbed, the organic material that he absorbed, should be able to be seen in his body. Not necessarily that he should be, that an arm should be bulging out from his back, but you should be able to sense that if you look really closely, the shape that Rast has made for himself is made from body parts of animals, of humans, and all that stuff. I think that Darkin should in general use that kind of aesthetic. It's just he doesn't do it. I think that's a really important thing. And then where is the imagery, or rather the connection to Shurima and celestial magic? And this is where I think that the Darkin also should look more like the animal totems. A little bit more. Like, it's cool that they look like sort of, how do you say, like this morphed versions of the ascended forms. But I think there's too little animal in this. I think there should be a little bit more, just so that you can tell that he is connected to the Ascended and thus Shurima. The celestial magic thing, again, the lock on the weapon would do the trick, I think. Maybe there should be some kind of lock on his body itself too. Actually, I just got an idea. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, there should be some Shuriman and celestial imagery, right? So for the scythe specifically, Rast's eye is really good because it obviously opens up with the amount of power and bloodshed that's happening around him, and he sort of looks like there's too much light in his dehydrated form. So he looks light sensitive, but in an evil way, right? And that works really well for him. But it also works well because there's a very clear contrast between how healthy he looks. You can see that when a lot of blood's happening and when he's unleashed and all that, it's not just unleashed, he's really, he's fucking in it. He's powerful, right? While the other one, as I said, it just looks dehydrated, sad, and hurt and all that stuff. So yeah. Once again, the handle wrap should look Noxian, should look much more messy. He should have some Shuriman depiction through Rast himself and not so much the scythe. But the celestial magic should be, we should be able to see that kind of, right? With some kind of luck on the scythe itself. One other thing, that the weapons rarely end up also being tied to like Shuriman and Ascended, which I think they should be. So having some kind of symbolism, some kind of Shuriman animal rune for whichever animal they were, I think that would also work. But once again, we don't want to over-design Rast, right? We don't want to over-design Scythe, we just want to tell the story. So that's very difficult to do because now we suddenly have 3 different regions that we need to tie him to. And how exactly to do that, I haven't figured out. But I do think that there are ways that you can go about it, and it should, in theory, be possible. Right. Oh, I have copied some stuff here, it seems. Yeah, okay, so the one other thing I can say about him is that Rast's own design should be working with the scythe. he himself should be missing that which the scythe has. In this case, that would be his other eye, right? So he should have the other eye that mirrors the eye on the scythe itself. And then on Rast, since Rast normally has two eyes, then instead of just making him like making one eye in the middle of his head, you can still keep the two eyes, but just have the other one locked with like the celestial lock thing that I spoke about that should also be on the scythe itself. You can just have that and then have the other eye be on the scythe itself. And the reason that's important to show is because the scythe is Rast. The body is not Rast. The scythe is Rast. So when he makes his body, he shouldn't be able to take that part of him that is the scythe shouldn't be a part of his body. The same way that Aatrox shouldn't have a heart, because the heart is inside of the blade, right? I also think that Funafiri, I don't know why the fuck they also gave that blade an eye. I think it's just for aesthetic purposes, because they probably... I have a suspicion that Riot has like... They are either restricting or like putting less money into the people that design the champions, because why the fuck would you create another eye? Like, the entire idea of the Darkin is that, you know, it's part of the body part, that and not only a body part, but one that also sort of mimics the character who is locked inside the weapon. But in this case, I don't know if an eye does that well of a job. That depends on Rast as an Ascended and his story there. So that's something that you should like turn into, you know, conclude in his story why it is that he's an eye. For Aatrox, it makes a lot of sense. He is the Superman of Sharena, so it is the heart. It's his heart that is inside of his blade. And so why is it an eye for Naafiri? Why is it an eye? Why is it not a mouth? And I don't think Naafiri should have had a mouth. I'm not entirely sure what I think would work for Naafiri. But like, I don't think an eye works for her. That's just annoying. You can also see Solani, which is one of the Darkins from Legends of Runeterra, which Rast is holding in this art piece. She's a lot about control, by controlling the blood inside of the other Darkins, stuff like that, mind controlling them for their own sake. Like, she's a corrupt version of a healer. So why, if she's about control, why aren't her... I don't know what they're called, like the weapons, I don't remember. But like the chain scythes that she have, why don't they mimic finger imagery? Why can't you see that those are her fingers? Like having been the thumb at the base, and then her hand sort of warps up and all of the rest of her fingers come down into like this pointy thing up here, right? Just have it be her hands, because she's controlling. Like, why not? You know? But yeah, so for that reason, I think that Rast should be tied to having one of his eyes be on the scythe permanently. Ascended Rast. So, fuck, I should have included artist for all of the stuff that I grabbed that isn't Riot. Okay, I think the person might have been called Cat, since that is on the art piece itself. But Ascended Rast, who is he? We know that Rast is a psychotic maniac. He's thirsty rather, and he's insane, and he just wants to kill, bloodshed and war and fight and all that stuff, right? So that is like a bull is a good way to show that, sort of, right? So there are some things about bulls that don't fit into that picture, but he is corrupt after all. So having an aggressive bull be Rast, I think that works really well for him. When a bull sees red, he also goes insane, right? And Rast's eye is all red. It's all red. So red is all he sees. So if he's a bull, then that's perfect for him, because he sees red, so he goes insane. It works a lot with his horns too. And when you want to write the story of Ascended Rast, you need to keep a few things in mind. You need to understand that if he's supposed to be a bull, then what characteristics does a bull have? Why is the animal that Rast became a bull? Why is he a bull? But also, why is he the eye? Why is he the scythe? Why is he the scythe? Why is he the eye? Why is he a bull? And then there was the last thing I wanted to get back to, which I mentioned earlier. Damn, I thought that was a pretty important point. Okay, but anyway, you just have to combine and create a character where it makes sense for them to be these different things. It makes sense, but because like these are inherently very different things actually. Like a bull and an eye are not things that you normally associate with each other. And also like what Rast, right, the devil on the shoulder, that was what I was going to talk about. So is Rast really a devil on the shoulder type character? Because he's a bull. Bull is isn't normally that. Instead, like the eye and the devil on the shoulder kind of works down the same lane, but a bull doesn't. And also like the bloodthirsty stuff doesn't really entirely work with an eye or the devil on the shoulder, but you can combine them if you write the story correctly. Well, bloodthirsty and devil on the shoulder, sure, because of the corruption thing, that actually does work. But I think if you write a really good story that takes place, or rather takes point of view in the different thematics of Rast, then I think yeah, definitely it would work. But it's gonna be difficult, right? So what should Rast look like? Fuck, spoiler alert. Okay, so this is my depiction of Rast, and I just want to once again say that I am not an artist. And if you can't see what's going on the image, that's completely fine. What I did was that I found the body shape of what I think Rast should look like on Pinterest, like from someone who made a Wendigo, and I'll try and put the artist names in the description. All right, so hopefully I can get all of that stuff done. But I found the body shape that I thought would work, and then I drew Rast on top of it. So this version is still very symmetrical, which I don't think that he should be. But if you fix that up a little bit, if you do some other stuff about him, like putting the lock on his missing eye, right? You have the eye that mirrors the one on the side, and then the other one you can just put the celestial lock or whatever on it. I think this is a lot better for what Rast is supposed to be. Rast is supposed to be the monster inside Kayn unleashed. He's not supposed to be a little guy. He is, after all, an ascended, and he's supposed to be a bull. Or, well, he's not supposed to be a bull, but he's supposed to be some kind of animal totem. And if you give him horns, then that has to be an animal that is gonna be bigger than a human, or wanna look bigger than a human body, right? He is a warrior after all. He is insane. He is bloodthirsty. He doesn't give a shit that his jaw is dangling, right? He should want to be able to run out and just murder everything. And to the left, you can also see that I had like a body amalgamation monster, and I also had one made out of bone. And these are the kinds of ways that I think that the Darkin should generally be made. Now, this is way too aggressive for what I would want from the Darkin, but I would want to be able to, when I look at a Darkin, see that their body is made out of other creatures. They haven't just like, because it's not unreasonable to say, well, they just decompose all the organic material and turn it into whatever they need, right? That would be the way to like sort of reason for why they don't look like that. But I don't think that works. I think it works a lot better if you actually go ahead and, you know, show that, to tell the story of the character, to make him interesting and epic and cool in his own unique way, right? Also, something else that I don't know if I ended up doing. I didn't end up doing it. But as you can see in like this art piece of Rast, he actually has his belt on the opposite side of where Kayn normally wears it, which is also the side of where Rast started corrupting. So that's really cool. So like the left side of him. I would have wanted to include that, but I didn't end up doing that. But anyway, this is sort of the depiction of what I would want Rast to look more like. So a little less symmetrical, maybe have the lock on the eye that's missing, right? My phone is ringing. Fuck, just a second. All right, so I'll just finish this up real quick, and then I can grab it. This is my version of Kayn. On a like a large scale, like the big stuff I want to change. I want to make each of his forms a lot more crazy. Like, make each of them the ultimate version of the thing that's corrupting Kayn, having taken him over and being unleashed. So the last few points I'd like to go through are whether Kayn and Rast are unique or not. So Kayn is not unique, but he does execute his base form perfectly. Absolutely, it's really, really good design. Shadow Assassin is good, but ultimately too weak for me. But I do think that Kayn does achieve being a really, really good character in spite of him not being unique. Is Rast unique then? And once again, well, Rast isn't unique either. He, however, does not perform as well as Kayn does, like the Shadow Assassin. So that's a weird way I said that, but yeah, he like the Assassin does not perform as well as Kayn does. So I would have liked each of his forms to be much more crazy. And that's it. I really hope that I managed to deliver something that you thought were cool, and something that you hopefully agree with. If you have any changes, if you have any suggestions, you let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. And I will also, okay, so normally I wanted to, let's see, how do I do this? So I want to roll the dice for the next champion I was going to do. But I think I'll just make a comment in the, well, comments down below, where I tell you which one I got. So which champion will be the next one, right? So that's all for today. This took a lot of time and energy to make. So I really hope you enjoyed it. And that's it for me now. Bye.